What's up, pickleheads? Back again this week. Excited to talk some more pickle. Austin is slightly out of town today. He's only like 45 minutes away from where he normally is. I'm still here in Vegas. We want to talk about 4 specific things today. We'll review what those are. It's like, I don't know, 110, 112 degrees here in Vegas. Hard to play outside. Definitely need some indoor courts here. Had some temporary ones for a little while. That was awesome. But not playing a ton of pickleball right now just because of how hot it is. But what's the weather like up there, Ross?
I don't even know what the temperature is, but it's like the definition of perfect. So it's probably around in between 70 and 80. And yeah, if you travel just 45 minutes down, it's the same weather as Spencer has. Spencer's slightly hotter. It's probably like 1 or 2 degrees hotter in Vegas than St. George, right?
Yeah, sometimes it can be just a little bit harder. It doesn't seem to cool off at night here, or it's not cool in the mornings. It's just always hot, but at least it's not direct sun at night, I guess. But yeah,
Right.
the elevation where you're at should be good.
It definitely cools off at night in St. George as compared to Vegas.
Yeah.
It gets
for sure.
a bit cooler. It's still pretty dang hot though.
Yeah. We'll get through it. Pretty soon we'll be complaining about how cold it is.
Yeah, I like the heat. Bring the heat.
Yeah, me too. It limits my pickleball game though. That's the only thing that frustrates me. Let's talk about underestimating and or overestimating your opponents. This is a big one for me. There's definitely mind games, especially in tournament play, but even in rec play. If you go and play with somebody new, maybe somebody's talking up your opponents beforehand, saying, "Hey, so and so is 5-0 plus. So and so is really good. They have this and this, so watch out." And sometimes when I hear that, to be honest, my brain tells me, okay, I start to overestimate the opponent, which I shouldn't do. And then that causes me to not play my game, but to start playing to the opponent's game. Worried about, I'm not going to hit to their forehand because somebody told me that their forehand was lightning, and I got to constantly get it to the backhand every time, and I'm too scared to push it over there to their forehand, or whatever the case may be. But overestimating is a big one for me, and then I shut down and don't really play my game, and then it doesn't work out. But what's your experience with overestimating your opponent, Oz?
Yeah, you defined it perfectly because I've had so many tournaments when I first started playing where people would be like, "Hey, this guy has a really good forehand speed up. Just keep it away from his forehand, and he's also ambidextrous or something." And so he's like, "So what you want to do is just make sure you keep your dinks really low." And then what do I do when I go into the match? I hit all my dinks into the net. Whereas if I would have just played my game, it's like, "Hey, trust in yourself. You got a great forehand speed up too. He should be scared of going to your forehand speed up." And focusing on your strengths and focusing on playing your game, like you were saying, is going to ultimately help you to win the match more than anything else can. If you really want to struggle throughout a match in a tournament, go into it thinking, this guy's better than me. On the opposite spectrum, Ben Johns, he talked about how he's like, really, I don't have any pressure on me because I am, number one, I am the one that has held the title for so long. And he wasn't doing it in a cocky way either. But he was just saying, like, all these guys come in, they're the ones that have the pressure. They're the ones that are worried because they're facing Ben Johns, who has literally beat everybody in Triple Crowns in almost every single tournament. So just don't psych yourself out and don't count yourself out. Go in with confidence. Go in believing that you're the best. If you go in with the Kobe mindset, you're going to ultimately play your game and play a lot better. And whether you win or not is completely up to your skills after that. So it just comes down to how much training you put in and how much practice you put in. That's what I'd say for overestimating.
Winner's mindset for sure. It's a big deal in pickleball and then obviously in other sports. But I was thinking too, like, Um, we'll get into the underestimating side of things here in just a minute, but I want to talk about what I'm not saying. So if you've studied your opponent's game and you notice that their backhand is really weak, but their forehand is great, I would advise that we try to go to their backhand more often, while at the same time still playing our own game. Not just, okay, we got to get to their backhand with every shot. Ooh, they hit a nasty drop right here, but I still got to get it over to their backhand instead of, trying to get the ball over like you
Right.
said so it doesn't go into the net. So I'm not saying don't ever play to your opponent's weakness, because it's a good strategy thing, or that your opponent has really good angles. You want to try to get to the middle so you can kind of cut off those angles a little bit. I was just barely watching Tyson McGuffin play Christian Alshon, both of which are pros, at PPA Takea in California. I was just watching it last night, and Alshon almost won in the second. He was way up, but Tyson started coming back. But one thing I wanted to do was scream at the camera, even though this wasn't live, and tell Christian Alshon, please hit it to McGuffin's backhand. He has no backhand. But I think Alshon got into his own head, and kind of stopped playing his game, and that's what made Tyson come back.
Right.
But if you notice that somebody doesn't have a great backhand, by all means, yeah, go there, but stick with your game plan. But so that's what I'm not suggesting. But what I am suggesting is, don't overestimate your opponent and think that they're too good, and then you automatically stop hitting your normal shots because you're worried about how they're gonna counter your shots. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah. Just don't be fearful when you're playing against players just because of things that you've heard, or maybe you've played against them in the past and they were really good. It's like, don't count yourself out ever. Always go into the tournament with confidence, believe in yourself. And also a really big thing is just believing in your partner too. Whoever you went into the tournament with, maybe you don't even want to play with them. It could be a tournament like that, but if you don't believe in them, they're not going to play their best. They're not going to play confident as well. So it's definitely a two-man or a two-woman thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about, another scenario is, recently I played someone that's very consistent, and their dinks are always very consistent. And so we're like, okay, let's play keep away from this person. But even then, there's a fine line to where, yes, we want to play keep away from that person a little bit, but at the same time, does that downgrade your game? Does that make it harder for you to try to hit it to their opponent every time? And if it does it cause you to hit it into the net? Does it cause you to
Right.
miss stupid shots because you're constantly trying just to get it away from them instead of playing where you would normally play? Um,
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Rather
just
th-
another scenario.
rather than playing keep away, I think obviously instead when you're in a tournament, you don't want to just go to the better player, but you want to go to where you are most confident, which is typically a cross court shot, because if you hit your dink cross court, you have, like, I don't know the exact footage, but probably 14 feet to work with. Whereas if you hit it, no, it's probably way more, because down the line is 14 feet. So it's probably like 20 feet to work with if you hit cross court. Whereas if you hit down the
Hmm.
line, it's 14 feet or around there. So it's like,
Right.
go for the highest percentage shot. Don't worry so much about the opponents on the other side of the net, and go for shots that will set you up for your peak shots, for your favorite shots, for your best shots. And the best way that you can do that is just by going for high percentage shots, and trying to stay offensive and making your opponents feel out of place, awkward, in a defensive mode.
That's a great point. Let's talk a little bit about underestimating us. This can also be a fault of mine, where you think someone comes on the court, they don't have as much experience. I can think of two major ways that this can downgrade your game. One of which is, if you're underestimating your opponent, then you're thinking that they're a less skilled player. So in a way, you start going away from your normal game. So maybe you're consistently speeding up from low because you know their hands aren't quick enough, and you're going to just get away with it. Or you're driving everything instead of dropping a little bit because they can't really handle the drive. Whatever that might be. I think that's not helping your game, because when you start, the next day when you go and play somebody that's your skill level or higher, now you have these little habits that you just created by underestimating the other guy, and uh, now you're speeding up from low too much against a really good player and losing. Or you're driving every time thinking they're not going to handle it, but they handle it just fine.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one detriment to underestimating your opponent. And then another, I would say point number 2 for underestimating your opponent, and we can go over this more in detail, is if I'm thinking that, okay, they're not going to get this stuff back, and then they end up being better than I thought, then I'm not ready for certain shots to come back. So I speed it up from low, and then the ball comes back at my face, and I'm not ready for it, or I'm not prepared, or I wasn't prepared for them to just hit it right back to me. But what's your experience, or do you have any I'm sure you do, with underestimating your opponent?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have much experience underestimating my opponents in a tournament, because in a tournament, I'm going to play as hard as possible at all times. Obviously, focusing on staying relaxed, but I just mean hard as in mega focused, and I'm trying my best. So in a tournament, I'm not really going to underestimate my opponents so much. Obviously, you play someone that you've played all the time and you've beat them all the time in rec games. You get into a tournament and you're like, I got this one. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think I have learned kind of my lesson with that already in rec games. So when I'm in a tournament, I'm going to go hard no matter what. And if you're going to play in the level that we're playing in, then I'm going to play my absolute best, regardless of who it is or if it's a friend or not. And then in rec games, I'd say is where it more so sneaks up. And I think that there's not a better way to lower your level, or at least stay stagnant, than to not play with lower level players, but that when you are playing against someone that you can handle and someone that you're better than, that you make stupid shots that work with them, like doing a speed up directly to their forehand just because your speed up's a bit quicker, has a bit more spin. They don't have the reaction time of someone that's on your level. Then you go play a rec game, wake up the next day. It's like you're going to stay on that same level. You're not improving. That being said, I think it's really important to, when you're playing with lower level players, to focus on specific shots that you're working on so that you can continuously improve and not stay stagnant, because that's another thing that you can do that will keep you on the same level that you're currently at, is beat them really, really bad, but you're not improving anything at the same time other than you're just sticking to your game plan. So I think that there's a fine line in between it as well, where you want to make sure that you're focusing on improving your game while at the same time not being stupid with shots, like hitting a lob to your opponent just to see how fast your hands are or something like that. But what would you say, what experiences have you had in tournaments or in rec?
I mean, this creeps up all the time. I mean, I was playing with a couple guys the other day where I went away from my game plan a little bit because I know they didn't have the experience. And then a couple days later, I went and played with someone. I mean, just perfect example, played with someone that was more on my skill level and started in the beginning making those mistakes. So I made zero improvement from having played that way and underestimating my opponents. And then number 2, it didn't help me. Like you said, my game didn't get any better for the next time I went and played. In fact, it might have been just a little bit worse.
Exactly.
And then another reason, let's talk about a third reason for not underestimating your opponent.
Okay.
So this one, how would I explain it? I would say that maybe the opponents are better than you thought. I've underestimated I hate to say it this way. I went and played in a 5-0 tournament. This is probably a year and a half ago, and we won our first match real handily. And those guys were rated pretty high, and we were pretty pumped, but our egos were tickled for sure, and we were ready for the next match. And the two guys that showed up were a couple of heavy set gentlemen, and I was like, no way are we losing to these guys. And so I kind of went away from my game a little bit. I underestimated them, and they ended up getting gold in that tournament, by the way, and they beat us
Yep.
badly in
Yep.
2 straight games. And I was like, whoa, I underestimated you guys. So underestimating can also be a great way to lose because you're not prepared to play your game, and you're not prepared to, for some offense on the other net, and you're not prepared for that skill. So anyway, that's been my experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had many experiences like that, especially starting out, underestimating opponents. Like, hey, we'll take them. A tournament that comes to mind was the second tournament that I ever played in, and I was playing with Jason Weedman, and the guys that we played are super good now. But like then, I felt like we had a round robin, and in the round robin, I think there were 6 teams, and we didn't lose in the round robin, just destroyed everybody. We're like, okay, we've got this tournament. There were some other good teams where we were like, we'll be close, but I think we got it. And so we get into the semi final. It went from round robin to round of 32, and then round of 16, the quarterfinal. So we got into the quarterfinal. Right now we're like 8-0, something like that. I think there were 7 teams
Single
in the
elim.
round robin. In the round robin, it wasn't, obviously, but yeah, then after that, it's single elimination. And then we played this team. I felt like we could just handle them in the quarterfinal, got into it, and we were just like, what's going on? Like, me and Jason are just looking at each other because they're up on us, and we just have no answers. And these guys played insane. Like, everything we did, we're hitting the most perfect shots, and they're getting them back every single time. We're not ready for it to come back. So that was an experience of underestimating the opponent. And it was only 1-15, so it was just over just like that after we had gone 8-0. And then we were totally out of it. And this team had lost to other teams prior in the round robin and everything. So just a funny experience. But, yeah, you have to go into every single match with a game plan of how you're going to beat those opponents. And it can't just be, I'm better than them, so I'll beat them. It's got to be an actual game plan that you go in with and execute on.
Yeah, that's another perfect example. All right, let's talk about point number 2 today, trick shots. Lots of these. I like that we don't talk about them beforehand because I want to see what your opinion is on them. The first trick shot that we'll talk about, and it could be a strategic shot too for some, especially those that come from tennis, but is the tweener. I'm not a fan, and I can't wait for somebody to say on Instagram or YouTube or whatever when we post this, oh, that's because you can't do it. You can't do the tweener, so that's why you don't like it. No, I can do it. I probably miss it more than I make it, but I just think it's a dumb shot. I just don't like it at all, especially no reason tweeners. If you were to watch pro pickleball consistently, like I do, I know I'm a picklehead or a complete nerd. The majority of the points, the team that plays the tweener loses the point. I mean, I would say 75 to 80% of the time, maybe even higher than that, whoever plays the tweener loses the point. But let's talk specifically about the tweener. I want to see what you think about it, Oz. If you think it's a good thing to use at times. I hate it. People miss it. One, people miss it more than they make it. And
100%.
two, when they do make it, they typically lose the point anyway later on. So what are your thoughts on the tweener specifically, and then we'll get into more trick shots.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that a tweener is necessary at times for a specific ball. that ball being for at least a behind tweener, like a through the legs where you're not facing the court tweener, is when there's a lob that's hit very effectively, lands near the baseline that you're barely getting to, and it's over your head. So you're running directly backwards towards it. Your options are A, hit a tweener, which you're going to keep the ball low if you hit a tweener, or B, do like a frying pan grip and you're going to lift it over your head and hit a lob back, which you may stay in the point. But I'm saying, like, for this specific example, it's a ball that you're barely getting to. So it's going to be ultimately easier to hit a tweener if you hit tweeners, right? And if you've practiced and you can hit a tweener, it's going to be a lot easier to hit a tweener instead of hit that frying pan lob, which they're probably going to put away anyway.
Sure.
So that's what I'm of the opinion of with a tweener where I'm not facing the court. But any other time, it's totally just for fun, and I wouldn't really do it in a tournament, but it just looks sick and feels good. Other than that, also, you can't really tell where they're going to hit the ball off a tweener. Whereas if they run around a ball and barely get to it, you can kind of see, and we're going to talk about that specific shot in just a second, I think based off of the notes, but you can kind of see where they're going with it, whereas with a tweener, you don't know if it's going to go to the right or to the left. But as for
True.
a tweener where you're hitting like a Christian Alshon tweener through your legs through the front, those are extremely simple to hit, and they make sense a lot of the time when people hit it directly at your feet and overhead and you just don't have time to move your feet out of the way. It makes sense to just spread them and split step and hit it through your legs. And at the same time, they don't know what direction it's coming off of because your paddle's behind your butt. So, yeah, I'm of the opinion that tweeners can be good. One other example, a backwards tweener. Someone hits it way out wide, and you're running for it full-on sprint. Hitting it in between your legs, backhand tweener's the only shot that's going to go in because you're running at that angle. I'd have to make a video to kind of show you guys, I think. But if you know what I'm talking about, you're running to the side, you barely get to the ball. The thing that makes the most sense is just spread your legs and hit it through your legs. You're not going to have much control, but it'll at least keep you in the point because you're not going to be able to get the ball back into their court. So those are my thoughts on tweeners. I think that they're necessary at times, but for the most part, it's just for fun.
Okay, so if we were to summarize your opinion, we would say, in most cases, last resort, if that's your only option. Would you say that?
Yeah, or if you just want to have some fun.
Yeah, and even as a last resort, I don't know. And again, I'm sure we'll get comments on this. Well, you don't have to like it. Oh, you can't do it. Okay, that's fine. That's definitely your opinion. And this is mine. I'm just not a fan of the tweener or trick shots in general. So we have differing opinions on that one. Not extreme opposites, but definitely differing opinions. So what about this shot? I don't think even has a name, and I don't know who invented it. I've heard Kyle Yates, and then I've heard Gabe Tardio, but I have a paddle here with me so I can explain for anyone that's watching, and then I'll try to be descriptive if you're just listening. So you're dinking back and forth cross court with the opponent, okay? And this is doubles. So we're dinking back and forth, dinking back and forth. Once the ball gets close at one point, we act like we're going to dink back to them cross court, and at the last second, flip our paddle to a forehand and punch it to the opponent in front of us or just down the line in front of us.
So we're dinking cross court,
maybe
odd side, backhand to backhand, right?
Yes, cross court, okay. Odd side, backhand to backhand. And then, so it makes it look like the intent of this shot is to make it look like, okay, they're going to hit another dink cross court, but last second they flip the paddle and they actually end up hitting a forehand speed up straight in front of them, down the line, and it can throw off the opponent. So, congratulations. You practiced that shot for hours and hours and hours, and you finally did it in a tournament and you won the point, and that's the only point you're going to get. That's my opinion on it. So, okay, you got a free point in a tournament. If you try to do that again, the opponent's going to be ready for it. Maybe you got 2 points in a match on it. I don't like it. Trick shots in general, I'm not a fan of. I don't think they should be practiced because the majority of the points that you win in a tournament are consistent things that when combined together, I mean that's how you win the tournament, not one shot winners that you're getting just
Yeah.
1 point off per tournament. So I don't know. People come up with these funny ones like that one that's like, okay, yeah, it's a cool shot. It's fun to watch on video, but if you want to improve your overall game, I honestly wouldn't waste your time practicing that shot. I would use your time wisely so that your dinks are more consistent or so that your drops are more consistent and you're able to put, top spin on them. Or that you're able to switch, and start using two hands so you can get more speed on your drive. Those types of things will long term get you more points and more points per game and more points per match. I'm sure I'll get some hate with this one, but anyway, not a fan of trick shots. What's your opinion of that shot, Os? I honestly don't think it has a name, but maybe it does.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know the name either, but I'm 99% with you. The only other percent that I'm not with you is if you can consistently hit it and you've been messing around on a wall or something, you can consistently hit it. It's worth getting a point during a tournament doing it and throwing your opponent off. But for the most part, it's like, okay, you can do that shot, but like Spencer was saying, you can't hit more than 3 dinks in a row. Obviously, you should stop working on that shot and you should start working on your dinks so that they're more consistent.
Yeah.
And I think that's same with the pro level, because even on the pro level, the only ones that I would say necessarily with don't have to work on their dinks, which obviously everybody still does, is like Annalie Waters, Ben Johns, Colin Johns, where they'll go an entire tournament and they show the stats and it says 0 missed dinks the entire tournament. It's like, what? How's that even possible?
Yeah.
So it's like even on the pro level, it's like obviously you guys aren't out dinking them because they have 0 missed dinks the entire tournament. So rather than working on your trick shot or thinking that it's cool that you made up some shot, focus on the fundamentals like Spencer's saying. So yeah, 99% with you. If you can hit a winner and get 1 point, that's worth it. That's definitely worth throwing it in there.
And another point that I'm sure there'll be a comment about, well, you don't just do it down the line. Sometimes you can go middle or you can go wide on this shot. It's like, that's fine. I get it. I've seen it. I've seen the videos, but it's just not very practical. And you're going to miss it more than you make it. But if you do want to spend all your time working on that specific trick shot just so you can get a couple points in a match, I mean, that's completely up to you, but that's not what I would focus on personally. I'm not trying to jab at anybody or anything like that. Just if I was a betting man and I wanted to consistently win tournaments and consistently get better, I would avoid practicing the trick shots and I would use my time wisely to practice other shots that can help you win more points.
100%.
Anything else to add to trick shots, Os?
No.
All right, let's talk. I do have one more thing to add. So I don't consider an ATP a trick shot. So anyone that's unfamiliar with what that is, ATP stands for around the post. I think that's a strategic shot, and it's used within the game. And I think it's wisely used. I think it should be practiced because it's a higher percentage shot as well. Things like that. Or an Ernie. I don't think an Ernie is necessarily a trick shot. I think that is one that can be practiced, if not overused. I think that's something that hurts some of the pros if they overuse it. I can think of Jay DeVilliers. I can think of Deckel Bar as well. Like a little bit overusing, and then it's hurting them, especially the Ernie. But I do think those are important shots and should be learned. Anyway, if you have a differing opinion, well, we're happy to hear it. It's not like I don't want you to comment. It's not like I don't want to hear anybody's opinion. I'm just letting you know mine. And yeah, I mean, maybe you can change my mind. I doubt it, but it's possible. Let's talk about dirty shots and dirty plays. Okay. First one I want to mention, Oz, is what they call the Nasty Nelson. I think that name's kind of dumb, to be honest. But what that is, well, that came from a player. I think his last name was Nelson. It wasn't forever ago, but one of the first ones to do it, just like the Ernie was named after somebody too. But that's when you're serving and you serve and you hit the opponent, not the one that you're serving to deep, but the opponent that's standing near the net, and then it's your point. I don't think this should ever be used. I'm not a fan of the Nasty Nelson at all. Any type of cheap points, or I would call them cheat points, I'm not a fan of. But that's one that sticks out in my mind. Austin, what do you think about the Nasty Nelson? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so the Nasty Nelson, there was this pro player. His name's Tim Nelson, and they called him the Puppet Master, was his nickname. If I'm thinking of the right guy, he would wear these like basketball shorts past his knees. He's super scrawny. Wore a hat, and he would crook it to the side. And he was like really baller for 2013. I think it was around 2013. So like just an absolute beast on the court. One of the best pickleball players back in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea where he is now. No clue.
Yeah.
But if you guys go look at 2013 pickleball, pro pickleball in 2013 compared to pro pickleball now, everybody says that it's like watching 3-0, 3-5 around that level. So that's how much it's changed. But yeah, this guy created the shot. He did it in a tournament and took the point, which it's like, yeah, you're trash if you do that. But
yeah.
it can also be funny. Like if it's for, if you're doing a tournament for money in the pro league and you're playing with Dirk Nowitzki or something, and yeah, you're just having a fun
like
time.
Like for charity, you mean?
Yeah, for charity. Yeah. Not for money for you, but for charity. Something like that, where you have all these fans watching, you guys have mics on or something, and you hit Dirk with the ball. That would be funny. But yeah, that's who that was created by. And then Ernie, I think you talked about Ernie, but it's Ernie Perry is the guy's name. Not sure how old he is. He looks like he's in his 50s area or around there.
Yeah, I would say 50s or early 60s. I saw a video of him recently.
What's funny about that is his Ernie, he doesn't jump the kitchen. He steps out of the kitchen, the guy that created it. He doesn't do a jump. He steps and then hits. And I watched a video from him, super nice guy. He's probably, I don't know, 3'5", 4'0" level. And he literally has the best shot ever named after him, which is really, really cool. But he talked about how he's been playing since like 1965. Way back when, right?
Wow.
And he talked about how the shot used to be, when he made it up, that you could reach over the net. So he would jump the kitchen, reach over the net, reach his paddle right where they were hitting, and then he'd hit it right back at the ground. I'm like, what the heck? And then he mentioned some guy, the guy that he did it to, and the guy's like, there's no way that's legal. He's like, it is legal. It's not in the rule books. And the guy went and made sure to put it in the rule book. So it was put in the rule books like the year after or something like that. But that was what an Ernie was prior, which is absolutely insane that you could reach over the net and just hit the ball directly down. If we were still playing by those rules, points would instantly be over all the time. So
yeah.
But pretty crazy. But that's what that was named after. But yeah, that's my thoughts on on the nasty Nelson, the Tim Nelson shot. I don't know why they called him the Puppet Master, but dude has some major swag for sure. What's the next one we're talking about? What's
Sounds
the
like it. I thought
next?
you were describing me for a little bit there. Super scrawny and crooked hat. Like, man, is he talking about me? But yeah. Okay, so we're both not fans. I'm just not a fan of any type of cheap point. Like, I don't know, I don't think it should
Yeah.
be part of the game. So another one that I'm thinking about too is like, and this can be considered a trick shot too, but it's a cheap and I would say cheating point. I saw a video where a guy says the score. Okay, so you're required to say the score before he serves, and then sets drops the ball on the ground. Okay, lets it fall to the ground, and then acts like, okay, I'm not going to serve right now. Like acts like I'm occupied, so that causes the opponent to be distracted. Like, okay, I guess we're waiting for them to serve. And then he takes his paddle down and scoops the ball into the court, if that makes sense. Scoops
Right.
the ball into the court and hits an ace because the opponent doesn't think he's even serving right then. And technically, it's not against the rules, but again, another one where I'm just like, nah, uh, I don't know, cheap points. If you're playing with your brother, like if you and I are playing and you want to do something funny, and it's just us, like
And
great.
then redo the
But
point.
if you want to
You're
do
not going to
anything
take
like
the
that
point.
in the
Yeah.
tournament, yeah, I mean, nobody should ever take that point. But those are the things I'm referring to.
Or hey,
As far as dirty shots or dirty plays.
there's a crack in the ball. Check this ball, and you hit the ball to your opponent that's standing at the net, and they catch it. And you're like, oh no, that's actually my point because you just touched the
Yeah,
ball. I already called the score. It's like it's
yeah.
funny to do that as a
I'm
joke, but to
glad you
actually
brought
take the
that one
point.
up. Yeah. So that's another one that we're against. Uh, I'm really glad you brought that one up. So that's another one. Yeah, technically they called the score, but then they pretend like there's a crack in there so that the opponent lets their guard down and then serve it. I don't know, not a fan of that. Another one I'm thinking about, and I don't know if this is as much a distraction as it is him being a goofball, but Riley Newman, I don't know. I'm not a fan. Maybe that's gonna get me a lot of haters, but whatever. Not a fan of Riley Newman, and so he will if he goes. It's been a little while since I've seen him do it. So he goes into the kitchen to get a ball off the bounce and dinks it back softly in the kitchen. Then sometimes he'll like stand and stay in the kitchen right there, like, oh, hit me, so that he'll tempt the opponent to like hit it at him so that it goes out of bounds or whatever when he ducks or
Right.
whatever. But any type of play like that, especially in a professional match or in a tournament, I don't know. I think it's just a dirty play, or in that case, a goofball play. Um, Not a fan. Not to be negative, but just not a fan of that. What do you
Well,
think about that one? I'm sure you've probably seen that.
it's honestly like I play pickleball. It's my favorite sport. I I think it's the coolest sport ever. Is pickleball absolutely nerdy and absolutely like not cool? Yeah, in my opinion. I think it's absolutely nerdy. But I absolutely love it and I think athletic people play it. But yeah, it's kind of funny how some pro players are just so full of themselves. Like, I'm a pro pickleball player. And I get comments on my videos all the time about, oh, these guys think they're actually athletic. I'm like, that's where I disagree. These guys are absolutely extremely athletic. Is the sport
Yeah.
totally nerdy? In my opinion, absolutely. But these guys are extremely athletic. There's so many 5-0s out there that are athletic, 4-0s, 4-5s that are just extremely athletic playing the sport. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is totally nerdy.
I love that point. All right, last item of the day, item number 4. We just want to talk a little bit about dink form for a minute, and I'll let you do that, Oz, since you're the dink master.
Yeah, so something I've been working on lately is for a long time, is my backhand dink because my forehand dink feels very natural. I feel like I can dink on the forehand side for quite a while. as compared to the backhand. Even a middle, if I'm on the, for me, I'm righty, so if I was playing on the even side and someone hits to my inside foot and I hit a backhand there, back cross court, that feels comfortable. But then if I'm hitting a backhand cross court odd side to odd side as a righty, doesn't feel very comfortable. So I've been working on it for a while and watching the pros, seeing what they do. And I'm in between. I'm mostly a one-handed backhand for sure, and I'll do a lot of slice on it. But I've also been working on a two-hander just to create more topspin on the ball, put more pressure on my opponents. But that's got a lot of work to do. But at the same time, it's like my backhand one-handed dink isn't very consistent anyway, so I should really focus on that. This is an aha moment for me mid-podcast. But what it is that I have figured out from watching the pros that you want to focus on is just some tips for your backhand. So first of all, what you want to do is focus on, if you're shanking the ball in particular, focus on hitting the ball near the throat of your paddle. Try to hit the throat of your paddle as you're drilling, and then slowly adjust to the sweet spot, which sweet spot's pretty close to the center / top of the paddle. So middle / top-ish is the sweet spot. You want to be closer to the middle of the paddle, though. And something I found is just focusing on trying to hit the actual throat of the paddle helps me to be more consistent with it. So that's one tip. Also, not over-exaggerating your stroke and doing a big stroke. Keeping it really small and concise, about 1 foot to 2 feet that you're hitting. And then having your left arm, this is the most important thing for me that's been a game changer, is putting my left elbow up as I'm hitting. Because what that's going to do is change the angle of the ball. If you're struggling with hitting your dinks consistently and they're hitting into the net on the backhand side, lift your left elbow up. And what that's going to do is put your right shoulder down. And then as you hit into the ball, your paddle's going to be on the correct angle to hit it consistently over the net to where it's landing in the kitchen in a good spot. Obviously, it's going to be different for different players with different grips, but you'll be able to adjust how high you put your elbow. And so this is great for balls that are behind you as well as balls that are in front of you. Just dipping that shoulder down, getting your left elbow back will help you really have a consistent backhand dink, and it's helped me tremendously. And it's same with a backhand drop. So what about for you, Spencer? What would be your tips for a backhand dink?
I just want to mention real quick. So if you're left-handed, the opposite is true. It will just be your right elbow. I'm gonna go and try this. I haven't tried that, or at least not consciously. Another important tip for dinking is video yourself dinking. It doesn't take very much. Everyone has a cell phone. Just while you're, whether it's a rec game or you are drilling, video yourself and see what you're doing, and then go on to YouTube and look at some pros and see what they're doing, and then compare and see you don't need to have their exact form, but see what you can do to migrate towards that form. Pick one that you like because some are different, but see what you can do to kind of mesh and make it so your dink is more consistent because theirs are. But videoing myself has helped me a ton. I'm a visual learner. For anybody that's a visual learner, I would definitely suggest videoing yourself, even though you might be embarrassed. You don't want to go back and watch it and ooh, I didn't know I hit like that. Like the first time I videoed myself, I was embarrassed. I was like, wow, I thought I looked a lot more athletic than I really do. But videoing myself has helped a lot, at least as far as my dinks go. Typically me with the dink, one more point, and this is an important one. I think of Dave Weinbach, the true GOAT of pickleball, senior pro.
100%.
He, and I bet you know what I'm going to say, he will watch the ball hit the paddle. It seems like every time he hits the ball, and I'll grab my paddle again to explain this, but Dave Weinbach will watch it hit and then go back to play. Anytime he hits the ball, he's looking down and watching it hit. And sometimes it seems even exaggerated. Austin can do an excellent Dave Weinbach impression when he's returning a ball or doing a drop. But it seems somewhat exaggerated. But think of how consistent he is, and because he's watching the ball hit that sweet spot of the paddle. And so he's not missing the ball, but he's also not missing the sweet spot, so it's not shanking it. Anyway, that would be my dink point for the day.
Yeah, and you just brought to my attention something that I see with players, beginner, intermediate, a lot of the time is they have a disconnect between their head and what their body and arm are doing. There's a total disconnect to where they'll hit a ball, their paddle goes one way and their head goes the other way. And that's not going to provide for a consistent dink. You're going to shank a lot too, or a consistent shot in general. You're going to shank because your eyes are moving, and as your eyes are moving, it makes it extremely hard for your eyes to focus on hitting the right spot of the paddle. So, yeah, what Dave is doing is keeping his head down on the ball and very, very still as he's hitting the ball. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Obviously, we're not going into deep detail on how to hit a backhand dink, but just some tips to focus on. So keeping your head down, just to recap, putting your elbow up and shoulder down is very helpful. Go watch Simone Jardim. Go watch Ben Johns as they hit a backhand dink. That's exactly what they're doing. You'll see those elbows come up. Another good example is actually Leah Jansen. She has beautiful form, but you'll see that elbow come up, and you'll be like, wow, I never noticed the left hand or the left arm, what it's doing. But it'll really stick out to you now as you watch. But, yeah, I tried it, and I'm like, holy crap. I'm super consistent on the dink on the backhand side, which I've never been. So I'm hoping that that's the solution because I've drilled it so much. But I always resort to relying on the beautiful forehand. It always gets her done for me. So, but I think I think that's it for today, right, Spence? Yeah.
Yeah, one last thing. I'm definitely a fan, and this isn't a good thing, of running around the ball if I can get a forehand on it. But if you video yourself, you can see yourself doing that so that you know to train and drill yourself to do more backhands. But, yeah, that was it. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. Think about the number one girl in the world. She does not run around her forehand. I mean, she doesn't run around her backhand to hit a forehand. She might do the opposite, actually. And then you think about the number one guy in the world. He does not run around his backhand to hit a forehand. His backhand he's very confident and it's very, very good. So,
yeah.
Hopefully these tips will help you guys. And, this has been a fun podcast, obviously talking about different subjects throughout. If you guys will just remember, if you aren't following the podcast, follow us. We're on YouTube. You can subscribe there as well. We're on Spotify, Apple. And we would really appreciate it. Obviously, we have new podcasts coming out every single week. We want to bring value to you guys, as much value as we can, help you guys to improve your games, help you guys to see what the pros say. I believe our next podcast, we're going to be having Mario Barrientos on. He's an awesome pro player, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of great advice for us. So make sure that you guys tune into that. And we will see you pickleheads on the next one.